Hey, Eric.
Hello.
I am going to make you the host so the recording doesn't stop when I leave.
Okay, no problem.
Make host. Change host. And then you can probably just record to cloud if you don't have enough storage on your computer.
It just says it's already recording, so I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
This meeting is being recorded.
Whoops.
I'll pause it for, I guess you can pause it for now if you want to. I hit record. I can do that. Cool. Hi, y'all. Good afternoon. I feel like since we started sharing the recordings consistently on YouTube, just doing the quick introductions. My name is Shin. I am the OCFSN network coordinator. And then we have Eric Shi, who is our policy intern and sideways right now. The CFS, Community Food Systems at the Legislature subgroup of a policy working group. And wow, I just lost my entire train of thought. Okay, today I'm going to kick us off with a few quick network updates. I dropped the link to the notes in our document, and so you can see all of the URLs associated. So the first one is the 2023 equity assessment for the network is open until April 28th. All of your answers are anonymous unless you want us to follow up on anything that you share. And you can also, once you finish the assessment, enter yourself in to win a $50 REF gift card. And then our first regional convening of the year will be taking place in Astoria on the North Coast on April 13th to 14th. Our focus will be on food hubs. And we still have about 10 open seats for that now. So don't snooze on it if you want to join us in Astoria. And then as of Friday, the opportunities page was just updated with new jobs, internships, and some funding opportunities in the food system. And the last item I just want to touch on is the recording for the March 3rd VeggieRx mini convening is available, and this is relevant for any folks who are tracking Medicaid 1115 waiver. There was some content around that. And I will pass it over to Eric.
Yeah, so we're just holding this session to share legislative updates on the bills that we've been tracking throughout the session. We are supposed to have a guest from PCUN show up, but he does not appear to be here yet. So I will try to reach out to him now.
Perfect. Thanks, Eric. And then Meredith had some updates to share. So I will, Meredith, I'll pass on to you.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to use a little bit of this space to provide an update on how the Oregon Health Authority has been responding to this working group and how the collaborative bill matrix actually shifted and impacted a lot of work that happened within the Oregon Health Authority legislative process. So full disclaimer, I have transitioned out of working at OHA. And so I'm just going to speak on what did happen kind of up to the point that I stopped working there. I am still going to be engaging with the Oregon Community Food Systems Network. I'm moving to Del Norte, California, but I'll also be in Southern Oregon and Grants Pass. I'm probably going to transition to working in participating in the other public policy working group, because I think the perspective that I had at OHA was a little more legislative focused, and I won't have that insight as much anymore. So not speaking with my OHA like official hat on, that hat is off. But basically, and I don't know how much of this I've explained before, but all of the agencies have like a government relations office. And so when the bills drop at the legislature, at OHA, they go through OHA's specific government relations office, and they're screened for relevancy to anything OHA. And if they're kind of flagged as relevant and needing to be tracked in any way relating to public health or potentially changing and impacting the operations of OHA needing to implement something, it gets flagged, and then it gets kind of trickled down through the massive organization. So it starts at the agency level at government relations, and then it gets assigned to its appropriate center, where it then gets assigned to its division, where it then gets assigned to potentially multiple sections, where it then gets officially assigned to one or multiple policy analysts who are responsible for all of the tasks associated with tracking bills. The bills are also prioritized 1 through 5, again, with the perspective of their potential impact on OHA operations. Like, would OHA need to put into effect this bill? Would kind of put it at a priority 1, down to a priority 5, which is called like relating clause only. It probably wouldn't change anything with OHA operations, but it's something like content-wise that we should be aware of. But an important threshold is when it's prioritized at a level 3 or above, because at a level 3 or a priority 3, excuse me, an actual bill analysis is required to be completed. So it's a form, and it's something that the bill analyst or multiple analysts need to fill out, and it kind of goes into our system. And again, the main purpose of that from OHA's perspective is to kind of prepare leadership for like thinking through any sort of implementation. But the way I started thinking about it, and kind of through our relationship with OCFSN, is it's also a paper trail of documentation, because part of the bill analysis form asks about community interest, community group interest, and other stakeholders. And so then it's a way for, or it can be used as a tool for communications, I think, within the agency, because it's so big and it's so large, it's hard to communicate across these different divisions and across these different sections, that it's a tool for being able to tell a story and say, hey, like, this is a public health issue, we're paying attention to it, and here are all of these community members or all of these other stakeholders that are interested in this bill. And so, especially when it comes to nutrition, which is what my kind of anything nutrition or food systems related kind of came to my desk. And we haven't historically in OHA had a well-funded program, and so there hasn't been a lot of community engagement done around these subjects. And so all of that background to say, when you all trusted me to be here and witness the collaborative bill matrix development and hear all of the legislative priorities that were on your plate, it was a really organized way for me and for OHA to actually document all of that community interest. So I wanted to call out like a couple of specific bills and that kind of got on our radar officially because of you all. So SB 610, the Food for All Oregonians, was something that was prioritized at a level 5 in a different section. But because of the substantial community interest, we were able to elevate it to a priority 4, which means we just pay a little bit closer attention to it, and it was assigned to multiple sections. House Bill 3030, the Universal School Meals Bill, wasn't flagged by OHA at all. It kind of came through government relations and trickled down. So that actually not only got assigned and kind of recognized by OHA, but it got recognized as a priority 3. And so a bill analysis was completed. And so that paper trail was started, and we were able to, I think for the first time, document OCFSN as a network and the organization's interest in a bill, and got that analysis pushed forward. And the third being the Healthy Soils Bill. That was something that was prioritized at a priority 5 that one was not on OHA's radar at all either. And that was something that we got assigned at a priority 5 for 2 different sections: environmental, public health, and the chronic disease prevention section. So, you know, it was a way for, I think, all of the work that you all have been doing and the relationship that we've been building to be able to respond to that bill matrix and actually get things in an OHA system. And I don't want to either like overpromise what that means. Again, a priority 5 is not the highest priority, but it does mean that there's the beginning of a paper trail. And I think it's something that we can use as a tool, that OCFSN can use as a tool. It's something that as we develop a more comprehensive nutrition security and food systems perspective into OHA, you know, these are these stepping stones, and they sometimes feel small, but I do want to say that it's pretty impactful, and it's directly related to the work that you all did. And so I wanted to call out those 3 bills and just kind of outline like what that process looked like, and that it changed some stuff inside. Lauren.
I'm really grateful to you, Meredith, for laying that out. Those of you who were involved with OCFSN back in 2019 at our last in-person convening that we had at Silver Falls may remember that we had a whole wall full of bills. And that was the first year with Lauren Johnson, who was our last Rare AmeriCorps volunteer, that we created a bills to watch matrix. And we've been refining that and building on it ever since. And it's always been helpful for us to organize within our network, but to hear that a state agency is actually using this to learn about bills and bring them is so great to know. And I hope all of you who have been involved with the policy committee from the beginning feel deeply gratified about all the work that you've put into making this a great thing. So thank you, Meredith.
Thank you, really, for all of the work that you've done. And I want to, you know, my departure from OHA is fine, and it's complicated, and I'm still in really close communication with the entire team and the other policy analyst who's just in grant writing season right now. But I am getting Jen up to speed, and I hope that this year and this example is something that can continue in years going forward, because there's also questions on that analysis forum that say, like, has a bill ever been tracked like this before? Have other stakeholders ever been, you know, documented before? And we can start saying yes and yes and yes to this. And I think it's just one tool of many to kind of inject as much strength around these policies and around this policy perspective. So I won't be far. I'm certainly happy to keep like talking about the inner workings of OHA and continue to work with Jen and continue to work with OCFSN because I think that there's many more ways to kind of engage around policy, not only in responding to bills that get dropped, but also creating legislative concepts. So I think that there's an opportunity in the future to really just go through like the workings of what OHA's policy pathways are. I think that there's 2 in particular that are like they're complicated, but they're concrete, and we can walk through them and kind of like identify each lever, like where decisions get made. And I think that would be really useful in the name of transparency. So I'm going to work with Jen on just kind of like who's going to do that and who can take that on, and just being careful of the hats and the roles that we have. But I think that that's a kind of a distinct and separate opportunity that I think could be really useful, and opening that up to the other policy working group as well, kind of depending on people's history and experience and things like that. So, and I will stop talking now, but if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, so Ira has joined the call, and I'd like to hand it over to him to share the legislative priorities of PCUN. That is, yeah, so thank you so much for being here, and thanks for being willing to share.
Hey everyone, I am in the building and my laptop wasn't working with the Wi-Fi, so I'm on my phone. Apologies for that. It's great to see many of you and others I think I haven't met, so it's good to see you all. My name is Ira Cuello Martinez. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Policy and Advocacy Director for PCUN, Oregon's Farm Worker Union. We're fairly involved participating with OFCSN in the past year and a half, but due to capacity constraints, it's been a challenge to be actively participating in these spaces. Sorry if it's getting a little noisy in here. One of the biggest priorities that we have for PCUN for this legislative session is Senate Bill 907, which is the right to refuse dangerous work. As we've seen over the last few years, it continues to become more dangerous, hazardous conditions that farm workers face when going out into workplaces, and this expands beyond farm workers, but really any worker who faces hazardous condition would be protected under this bill. And for everyone's context in this space, right to refuse dangerous work is already a right that workers have. Federal OSHA has standards around it. Oregon OSHA has also adopted similar language to the federal rule, but it's very underutilized. Based on our conversation with Oregon OSHA, they haven't had any investigations related to refusing to work in dangerous conditions. So it's a very underutilized rule. People aren't aware about it, and it's very technical for workers to actually go through the process to refuse dangerous work. And so what we're proposing under Senate Bill 907 is that workers would communicate the identified hazardous condition to their employer. And when I say hazardous condition, it's specifically referring to any condition that would lead to a serious injury, serious impairment of health, or death. So these are really extreme cases that we're referring to, and not like if there's water spilled on the ground and someone feels unsafe and then they're going to refuse to work, they wouldn't be protected under this bill. It's really that an example that I've been using, if the air quality index is over 300, it's already hazardous levels. A farm worker with asthma is using a respirator that they are required to use under Oregon OSHA rules, but that doesn't completely eliminate the hazard of exposing themselves to wildfire smoke with just the respirators. And so in those instances, being able to not work unless they're being reassigned work to a place where there's less wildfire smoke, which in farm work, it's inherently difficult to find that. Some places, they do have indoor facilities to like work on production or other part of the food system, but in many cases, it's just really challenging. And frankly, it's really frustrating to hear about farm workers being asked to work when everyone else is being asked to stay inside in the case of wildfires. But it could also apply to another scenario where a farm worker is being asked to drive a tractor with faulty brakes, and the employer is not taking action to fix the faulty brakes. In that situation, theoretically, the employer should be fixing the brakes, but they're not. The worker knows that they're not. It has led to other injuries in the past, and so that's another case where the worker would be able to exercise this right to refuse dangerous work. So again, it's already something that's in rule now. We're just trying to clarify and simplify the language so workers actually know how to apply and exercise the rule. I think the second piece and the more important piece is the retaliation protections, because at the federal level, there isn't any, or maybe they're very weak protections. In Oregon has some of the strongest retaliation protections under rebuttable presumption clause that's in statute. So we just want to connect existing retaliation protections in Oregon statute to this bill. And then the last piece of it is if we can help workers, be compensated for any lost wages. So that would be through like PTO, sick time, or vacation time that they could use to help with any of the economic hardships they may face from not working in those conditions. So just a really quick overview of the bill that PCUN is focusing on and working on this legislative session. It's scheduled for a public hearing this Thursday. So we're working to have that hearing, and we're anticipating that's going to be the first of 2 or 3 hearings, since it's the first time legislators are looking at this bill and learning about it. We are in the bill, there's also inclusions of language that if there's an evacuation or emergency order provided by the state, that workers could also refuse to work in those conditions. For instance, if they're in evacuation level 3, which means that they have to already like evacuate their home, that they would be able to have protections in case that they're being asked to work, which we didn't hear too much about here in Oregon, but it was the case down in California. So we just want to add some protections and safeguards in case those scenarios happen in the future. And then the last piece of it is if there's criminal activity happening at or nearby the workplace, for instance, a mass shooting, then the workers would also be able to refuse to go into work until the criminal activity has been no longer poses a threat. So I just shared a lot about the bill, and I'll take a pause there to see if folks have any questions, reactions, or anything that they want to share. This is PCUN's main priority, but we're also supporting a few others. One of the ones that was already mentioned was the Food for All campaign. So that's one that PCUN is supporting on. But yeah, I'll take a pause there to see if folks have any questions, reactions, comments, or feedback.
That it's really important. And thank you for championing the bill.
Hi, Ira. I just have one question. Do you anticipate this bill having a fiscal impact or expanding current like enforcement forces, or what do you think is going to happen in that regard?
That's a great question. We are not anticipating that this will have a fiscal impact, so it will not go through Ways and Means. It's really just a policy technical fix and adding protections that already exist. I mean, in theory, there will, like, as workers know more about this rule, there's going to be more cases, and that there will need to be more enforcement capacity. But that's like an ongoing issue that PCUN is working on directly with these state labor agencies and also supporting them with their budgets whenever they request support. For instance, BOLI is the agency that focuses on retaliation. And so they asked us if we can support them with advocating for investigators and their budget for this legislative session. And so that's something that we're supportive of and want to make sure that not only are we passing these laws, but they're also being implemented, which I think is one of the key pieces of campaigns. Is after getting a bill passed and signed into law, what is it going to look like in practice? What do we need to do to build capacity or get capacity? Because enforcement is a really weak area with a lot of labor protections we've been passing, and so we are working with our state labor agencies and want to continue ensuring that they have enough resources, capacity, and systems that are effective as well, which is one of the main things that we're working on with them. I'm also happy to share the one pager with whoever can like distribute it to the group so folks can see exactly what I shared, but in writing. And if folks are interested too, we have a testimony template and the coalition letter, if that's something that is of interest to folks, and I can circle back with folks about all those different resources we have available.
If you want to email those materials to me, I can send those out with a recap of this meeting.
Perfect. Thanks, Eric.
Is it time for more general policy updates?
Yeah, if there's no more questions, I think we can move on to that.
This is Megan. I have to go into the Capitol for a vote on our bill in a few minutes. Is it okay if I go ahead? I'll go ahead. Okay. I think we're doing this is the time of our meeting to share other policy updates related to the legislative session. And I have 3 bills to give updates on. One is, well, actually 4. One is the soil health bill, and the soil health bill has a work session, which is where the committee votes to advance the bill or not at 3 o'clock today. So in about half an hour in the House Ag, Natural Resources, Land Use and Water Committee. And the bill has been significantly amended. For those of you who've been following it, it's been streamlined a lot. So it started out creating a pretty comprehensive soil health initiative, as well as providing funding and resources to a bunch of state agencies and entities. And now most of the initiative structure and process is removed, and we've just got the incentives, the grant funding, the capacity for the agencies, basically the resources for farmers and ranchers, and not so much of the process. And that was partly because industry had concerns about so many little pieces of it, but more importantly, because I had real concerns about it making it out of the Ways and Means Committee with a $4.5 million fiscal attached to it. So it had a $4.5 million price tag originally, and now is closer to just under 2 million. It's just under 2 million, and I think much more feasible that it will actually. It didn't help us at all to move the bill out of committee if we didn't get it funded, because the bill would just die. So we're, I think, going to have hopefully unanimous vote in committee today and move it along to be funded. And the amendments are posted, and I'm feeling good about it. And the Natural Climate Solutions bill is going to have a vote probably this month, before the end of the month. Any bill that's going to make it needs to have a work session or vote before April 4th. So we're all anxious in the next 3 weeks to see our bills move. And then I have word from Melina with the Farm to School Network that the Farm to School funding request has a hearing in the Department of Education's budget is having a public hearing next Thursday. And so they'll be requesting support from the Farm to School community for the $10 million request. And I happen to know that I think the Egg Heritage Program campaign folks aren't here with us because they have their big public hearing today in about half an hour in the House Ag, Natural Resources, Land Use and Water Committee again. And that is the $10.8 million ask for funding for Oregon Egg Heritage Program that will be heard with the public hearing in a few minutes here. I think, Meredith, are you facilitating this section and calling them folks? Or do you want people to just
Sorry, Megan, could you restate that first bill that you mentioned?
Soils bill, which is House Bill 2998, now 2998-1, because it has been amended, or is we're supporting the HB 2998-1.
Great, thank you.
And Megan, just a quick clarification that the -1 leaves the staffing, most of the funding for staffing in place. It sounded like
yeah, I can. It includes the soil health specialist position. It includes extension capacity for soil health. It could be as much as 1 or 2 FTE for extension capacity. It includes instead of a $2 million grant program through soil health grants through Oregon Egg Heritage Program, it's scaled back to $500,000 kind of as a pilot. And then another $500,000 for the soil and water conservation districts for technical assistance. And there's something else I'm missing. Oh, and a little funding to OSU College of Ag for soil testing.
okay, great, thank you.
Is it okay if we just jump in, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'd be ideal.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here today. I'm Alice Morrison, I use she, her pronouns. I'm with Friends of Family Farmers. And we have been championing a few bills at the legislature. SB 507-2, which is our Farm Direct Enhancements legislation to make some amendments to the Farm Direct Marketing Law regarding the producer processed exemption for, value-added products. That bill has passed out of the Senate and is waiting to be assigned to its House committee. So that's going really well. We wrote both the -1 and -2 amendments. It's just the original drafting had some things in the wrong places for our food safety experts. They wanted to make sure that the processes were lined up with the products that they needed to be to avoid any potential food safety problems. And then there was a slight wording change that also needed to be added after we got our -1 amendment back, but we are behind both of those amendments. -2 is our final version, and we do anticipate that that will be scheduled in the House Ag et al. Committee after that April 4th deadline and move pretty well. We don't have any opposition registered, and the Department of Agriculture has seen everything and approves everything, and they were the ones who requested the raise on the sales cap for that as well. So it went from 20,000 to 50,000 for those products, and that was by request of the agency. So that one's all good. We are also the force behind HB 2616. We're calling it Small Dairy Modernization. It is the raw milk bill. We have been informed that that will not be moving forward past the Friday deadline. So that's really unfortunate, but we knew that that was a multi-year campaign in the making. We've had the most productive conversations that we've had. We will be issuing a statement on Friday. It's just there wasn't the political will to move that part forward at the moment. But we look forward to our champion, Rep. McLean, who we're so grateful for, continuing to convene conversations with us and the registered opposition on that bill. So conventional ag groups and the health authority to see if there's some middle ground for us to find safe and reasonable ways for this product that already exists in our communities to exist in a better space. So that is that. And then we are also heavily involved in SB 85-1, which is the factory farm moratorium. It used to be House Bill 2667, but now we're in the Senate with our Senate strategy. And that bill has had a series of hearings and has predictably drawn a lot of hyperbole on both sides, but we feel good about the version of the bill that's currently in the Senate. It is different from the House version in that it requires studies to be conducted at several agencies, including ODA, the Oregon Department of Water Resources, DEQ, and some others to kind of codify how the study of the impacts of large tier 2 CAFOs would impact our economies and ecosystems and all of the ways that we've been talking about this issue. And then there is also a sunset on SB 85-1. It is currently an 8-year sunset. So the moratorium would last 8 years. There's a 5-year requirement for those studies. So the studies would come out and then, we'll be doing our darndest to implement regulatory change in the interim there. So that's the difference between 2667 and SB 85-1. We anticipate that being scheduled for a work session shortly. And I also wanted to bring up that Shannon and I, and Megan was involved in early stages of this conversation, but understandably you have other things that you have to take care of. But I just got an email while we've been on this call from Representative Hellman Owens about the drought relief package. And I'm happy to announce that the first version of this, obviously, we anticipate that this could change, but the first version of the drought relief package does include $3 million to flow through OCFSN for direct farmer drought resilience grants. So giving farmers money to buy infrastructure and materials to be more resilient to changing water conditions here in Oregon. So that's going to be great. And there's also $1.2 million in that package for OCFSN to conduct drought resilience through their food hub working group and for food hubs in general. And there's additional funding. I believe it's $3 million total for the Oregon Farmers Market Association to make our farmers markets more drought resilient. And there's also a specific earmark within that $3 million for additional technical assistance and materials to help more farmers markets take SNAP across the state. So paying for equipment and software subscriptions and technical assistance to set those things up. Those were all requested to Shin and myself from Rep Helm's team a couple weeks ago, and we worked with our partners at OFMA, and I believe there's also some funding for some Oregon Food Bank programs in there, and we rallied everyone together very quickly and turned around a proposal to them, and I believe everything that we asked for is included in that proposal. That's going to be HB 3124. And that is coming up. I believe there's already materials about this on OLIS if you want to check it out. And interesting stuff there. We'll see what comes out of the budget process and see how much of that is included at the end. But I want to note that there is no direct disaster relief dollars through OCFSN in this package. And I believe that that's because there was not enough I'll call it political will to get an additional ODAP. This is more of a resilience and addressing the drought situation than responding to like making farmers whole for specific disasters, like because that's how it was before with the previous OCFSN disaster relief fund. So it's a little bit of a different flavor moving forward, but I just heard about that right now. And then I know that Amy Wong was on this call earlier. We also, I'm sorry to take up so much time, but we also, Senate Bill 789 had a hearing last week. That is for the Willamette Protected Districts for canola. And that is a crucial bill for our specialty seed producers. I do want to have a moment to say that it would be, if the only thing that you take away from all of the things I just told you is that we need your help on SB 789. Because there is one scientist who does not represent the whole of OSU, but who is saying that she does, who has been having a very narrow point of view and lobbying very hard to say that canola is not a contamination risk. And because that is coming from someone who is a doctor, has a PhD, and is affiliated with the university, the committee is willing to believe that, and we know that that's demonstrably false, but that has been a really hard fight, that harder than we thought it would be. That protected district has been in place for about 12 years now and is crucial to the continuation of our specialty seed industry here in Oregon, which it generates tens of thousands of dollars per acre and makes small farms possible in a lot of parts of the state. So we really need to protect the ability for people to grow brassica seed here in Oregon, because so many parts of the world are not able to do it anymore because of canola contamination. So I will send out the materials that Amy and I have. This is a bill through the Oregon Organic Coalition, of which FOF is a member. So I would really love for you all to send this out to your networks if you are at all concerned about this issue, because we are facing a little bit of misinformation that's making it harder to get a work session scheduled than we thought. So I will close with that. Thank you for the time.
Thanks, Alice. And when materials for 3124 are available, please be sure and let us know, because that's one we'll jump on, it sounds like. Oh, thanks for mentioning 3366. Like Megan mentioned it, actually, the Ag Heritage Program. I'm actually writing testimony right now at this minute while I'm listening to you in support of that one. That's the Ag Heritage Program. We're also supporting several of the other bills that have been mentioned already, but I'll not take time with those. I do want to mention a couple things. The Senate Bill 4, the CHIPS Act bill that's, I don't know if this has hit anybody's radar yet, but there's some big money that could come into Oregon to help create or to help site and prop up high-tech chip manufacturing facilities in the state. There's a bill right now to try to bring that in that would give the governor basically superseding authority to override urban growth boundaries and site large acreages, and we're talking like up to 1,500, 1,700 acres possibly of land to be brought into urban growth boundaries for the purposes of creating jobs. And of course, most of the land that would be brought in would be agricultural land. It's very thinly veiled that the target land for this bill is outside of Hillsborough in Washington County. It's highly productive farmland. There's been attempts this is the 4th attempt in the last 10 years or so to get this brought into this urban growth boundary under some guise or another. It's highly contentious. There's a lot of money behind it. There's a joint committee that's between both chambers that held a hearing last night, and they decided they were done hearing from people at that point. You can still submit written testimony there, but if that's one that we're arguing that there are a number of cities that have gone through the proper process, identified appropriate lands, brought them into their urban growth boundaries. That land is sitting there. The investment's been made. Let's get that stuff. Funded and get it ready for development and not circumvent the process. For one, that's dangerous, but it also sets a bad precedent. So that's a big one that we're really paying attention to right now. There's a bill that I've just learned about in the last few days, House Bill 3244, which would create a task force on the economic competitiveness of Oregon's farmland. And the hope would be if that got funded, we could get information into that process that describe the importance of the agricultural sector to Oregon's economy, and then really looked at the challenges that agriculture faces, including the conflicts for land use. And maybe we could get some of most of you heard me talk about our Death by 1,000 Cuts report that talks about the 60+ uses that are now allowed on farmland, many of which have absolutely nothing to do with farming, and create conflict with neighbors and make it harder for them to continue to farm. Hopefully we could use whatever came out of that process to strengthen the land use protections for agriculture to keep that land protected for agricultural purposes. And then there's 2 placeholder bills I want to mention too. 3180 and 3179 have to do with solar siting on, well, it's supposed to be renewable energy facility siting, but it's pretty much coming down to solar siting and where it can and can't be sited on exclusive farm use zone land. Right now, those bills are pretty much empty. They're sitting there ready to be stuffed. There's been a work group that we've been a part of that's been going for months on figuring out, let's set some parameters. If you want to go here, that's fine. If you want to go over here, then we might have a fight kind of things to give the industry some certainty on where they can go, but also to keep them from, there are some players in the industry, and not all of them, that really would like to have all restrictions lifted. And this is, we need solar, so let us put it wherever we want to put it, kind of thing. And we're fighting against that definitely too, since a lot of that, again, they like the big flat open spaces, which is mostly farmland. There's already been more potential between the things that have been approved and the things that are seeking approval right now. There's already been more acres approved than we have transmission capacity to carry. So why are we still having fights over putting solar on prime farmland. So anyway, those two bills, we don't know what's going to be in them yet. Hopefully that will emerge in the next, I think there's a hearing on 79 tomorrow, but we haven't even seen a draft of what's going to be in it yet. So there's a couple other things, but I'll leave it at that. Those seem to be the important ones right at the moment. Oh, and I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. Greg Holmes, 1000 Friends of Oregon. Obviously, we're concerned about land use and protection of farmland. Thanks.
Jump in with a quick update, and I am outside, so if folks hear background noise and it's too loud, please let me know somehow and I'll go on mute. But Mackenzie, she, her, with Oregon Food Bank, just wanted to give a quick update on SB 610, which is the Food for All Oregonians bill that we've been working on in coalition. The bill had a hearing on February 27th, which with lots of support from OCFSN folks. So if you submitted testimony, just big thank you to the folks who did. We had a really great hearing with a ton of powerful stories from community members talking about the impact that this bill would have. And the committee seemed to listen to those stories, and then had over 200 written testimonies with 94% of them being positive. So just wanted to highlight success coming out of that is made up because of folks in this room and folks that are part of the coalition. Just a quick update, our next big push around the bill will be an advocacy day that we'll be having on April 12th in Salem. I'll put a registration link in the chat for folks to look at if you want to share with your members if you've endorsed the bill or just want to take a look at information for that. But we'll have some barrier mitigation funds for support with transportation, childcare, things like that. So that's the biggest update. And then just wanted to say thank you, Ira, for naming the right to refuse work bill. I think we are supporting that as well. So it was great to hear more components of that bill. But that's all the updates related to food and farming on the OFB side that I have.
Does anyone else have any other updates or anything they'd like to share?
Yeah, I think it sounds like we're ready to wrap things up. While we were planning this meeting, we were having some discussion about holding a post-session session with the entire network, just to share the legislative updates, just to kind of recap everything. Does that sound like a good idea?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think the premise was that in previous years, the working group had held its own small recap session, but we want to extend that to the rest of the working groups and the whole network this year.
Eric, were we also going to try to schedule a next meeting and kind of ask what this group wants to do next time? I wasn't quite sure, because I know I'm not going to be really participating in this work group as much anymore, but can relay information to Shin and Lauren, and as can Eric. But Eric, am I right in posing that question? When do we want to meet next, and what would we like the group to be?
Yeah, so for this working group, we should just be sticking with the monthly meetings. I think we'll just have another legislative updates session next time as well. But we're also trying to schedule you to do the OHP just to unpack OHP's structures and stuff like that. And that might be with both the working groups in May, I think, is when you might be available. Is that right?
Yes. When
Okay.
you say OHP, are you talking about the Oregon Health Plan and specifically talking about ways to influence Medicaid, or OHA, like OHA's legislative process?
I was just looking at the email that Shin sent me this morning. Yeah, this morning.
Okay.
And yeah, just like talking about demystifying the structure of OHA policy work, collaborative funding models within OHA, and some other stuff, I guess.
Great. Sorry, I just got my acronyms mixed up. That sounds great. Yep, we'll plan that for
Great.
May.
Okay, if nothing else, I think we'll wrap it up here. Thank you all for coming, and thanks for sharing all of the comings and goings of the legislature.
Bye, everyone.